The first thing I heard after my shoulder struck the bottom step was my son laughing. Not shouting for help, not asking if I could move, laughing. The sound came from above me, sharp and careless, followed by the creak of the basement door. I lay twisted against the concrete floor, one leg trapped beneath me, staring up through a narrow rectangle of yellow light. "Dad," Daniel said, still catching his breath, "you should have seen your face." His wife, Claire, stood behind him with one hand over her mouth. For half a second, I thought she was horrified. Then she turned away to hide a smile. My wrist throbbed. My ribs burned every time I breathed. But the worst pain was realizing neither of them had moved toward me. I was 72 years old, lying at the bottom of 12 wooden steps in the house I had paid for, repaired and protected for almost 40 years. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. "You're fine," he said. "You always exaggerate." I looked at him without answering. He had my eyes, his mother's chin, and the same scar above his eyebrow from when he fell off his bicycle at 8. I had carried him home that day because he was too frightened to walk. Now he watched me bleed as though I were an inconvenience. Claire checked her phone. "We're already late," she said. "Your father can call someone." Then she glanced down at me. "You do still know how to use your phone, don't you, Richard?" That was how she spoke to me now, slowly, sweetly, like I was a confused child. Daniel reached for the door. "Don't stay down there all night," he said. "The appraiser is coming tomorrow." The door closed. Their footsteps crossed the kitchen. Ice clinked into glasses. Then music began playing, low and cheerful. For several minutes, I did not move. Not because I could not. Because I was listening. They thought the fall had been an accident. They thought I had not noticed Claire's foot slide behind my ankle as I reached for the light switch. They thought age had made me slow, frightened, and easy to control. They were wrong. I pulled out my phone and called no ambulance. Instead, I photographed the bruising around my wrist. Then, I recorded the music upstairs and Daniel's voice saying, "By tomorrow, this place is finally ours." Only then did I force myself upright. It took nearly 20 minutes to climb the stairs. The kitchen was empty. 2 wineglasses sat beside a folder marked property transfer. Daniel's signature was already inside. Mine was not. I went to my study, locked the door, and sat behind my desk. There, beneath the brass lamp, was a cream-colored envelope I had not placed there. My name was written across the front in my late wife's handwriting. Underneath it, in red ink, were 5 words. "Do not trust our son." For a long moment, I only stared at the envelope. My wife, Evelyn, had been dead for 11 months. I knew her handwriting better than my own. The slight hook beneath every lowercase I, the way she pressed too hard on capital letters, the tiny gap she always left between the words do and not. This was hers. But it could not be. I slid a finger beneath the flap. Inside was a single sheet of stationery from the hotel, where Evelyn and I had spent our 25th anniversary. "Richard, if you are reading this, then Daniel has moved too quickly, and I was right to be afraid. Do not confront him yet. Check the blue ledger behind the false panel in my sewing room. Then call Miriam Cole. She will know what to do. I am sorry I kept this from you. I thought I was protecting you. Evelyn." My hands began to tremble, though not from the fall. Evelyn had never spoken badly about Daniel. Even when he disappeared for months, borrowed money he never repaid, or blamed us for every failure in his life, she defended him. "He's lost," she would say. "Lost people still need a way home." Yet near the end of her life, she had changed. Whenever Daniel visited, she watched him more than she spoke. Once, I woke at 2 in the morning and found her sitting in the dark kitchen, clutching a bank statement. When I asked what was wrong, she smiled and said she was tired. I believed her. That was my second mistake. I folded the note and slipped it inside my jacket just as someone tested the study door. "Dad?" Daniel called. "Why is this locked?" "I'm changing clothes." A pause. "You didn't hurt yourself, did you?" Concern had finally entered his voice, but it sounded rehearsed. "I'll survive." Claire whispered something outside. Daniel lowered his voice. "The appraiser will be here at 10. We need you to sign the transfer papers before then. We'll discuss it in the morning." "There's nothing to discuss." The handle shook harder. I looked toward the bookshelf where Evelyn had kept her sewing magazines after her hands became too weak to stitch. The sewing room was across the hall from Daniel and Claire's bedroom. Reaching it tonight would be impossible without being heard. So I made a choice. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and removed an old digital recorder. I had used it for business meetings before retirement. The battery still worked. I pressed record. Then I unlocked the door. Daniel stepped inside first, wearing the smile he used whenever he wanted something. Claire remained behind him, holding the property folder. Daniel looked at my swollen wrist, then at the desk. For the briefest moment, his smile vanished. "What was in the envelope?" he asked. I did not blink. "What envelope?" Behind him, Claire went completely still. Claire recovered first. "You're confused," she said with a soft laugh. "There wasn't any envelope." "No?" I asked. She shook her head. "You probably hit your head when you fell." Daniel stepped closer, studying my face as though trying to measure how much I remembered. "You scared us, Dad." An hour ago, he had laughed while I lay at the bottom of the stairs. Now he sounded like the perfect son. I almost admired the performance. "I'll be fine," I said. He relaxed slightly. "Good. Then let's finish the paperwork tomorrow." He placed the property folder on my desk and turned toward the door. "One more thing," he said over his shoulder. "Don't stay up too late. You need your rest." The moment they disappeared down the hallway, I locked the study again. The recorder had captured every word. It wasn't much. Not yet. But lies had a habit of multiplying once people believed them. I waited until after midnight. The house slowly settled into silence. The dishwasher stopped humming. The television downstairs clicked off. Finally, I heard Daniel's heavy footsteps cross the hallway, followed by the bedroom door closing. I counted another 30 minutes. Only then did I leave the study. Every joint protested as I climbed the narrow staircase leading to Evelyn's sewing room. Nothing had changed since her funeral. Her favorite rocking chair still faced the window. Half-finished quilts rested neatly inside wicker baskets. The scent of lavender lingered faintly in the air. For a moment, I forgot why I had come. I simply stood there remembering the evenings she spent sewing while I read beside her. She always claimed silence sounded different when shared with someone you loved. She was right. Now the room echoed. The note had mentioned a false panel behind the blue ledger. I searched the shelves until I found it. A thick accounting book hidden between sewing manuals. When I pulled it free, I noticed tiny scratches around the wooden panel behind it. Evelyn had never mentioned this. Carefully, I pressed against one corner. The panel shifted open with a soft click. Inside rested a small metal box. No larger than a shoebox. Locked. My heart sank. Then I noticed a tiny envelope taped beneath it. "Richard, the key is where you proposed. Trust no one until you read everything. Especially not Daniel." I closed my eyes. Where I proposed. 48 years earlier, I had asked Evelyn to marry me beneath the old oak tree overlooking Lake Mercer. Every anniversary afterward, we buried a small tin capsule beneath its roots containing a handwritten memory from the previous year. No one knew about that tradition. No one, except Evelyn. Someone had planned all of this long before she died. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. His expression wasn't sleepy anymore. It was calculating. "I thought I heard someone up here," he said quietly. His eyes dropped to the metal box in my hands. Then his face turned completely white. Neither of us spoke. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the metal box, and in that instant I saw something I had not seen since he was a teenager caught lying about crashing my truck. Fear. Not embarrassment. Not guilt. Fear. He forced a smile that looked painful. "I was wondering where that old thing went. You've seen it before?" He hesitated half a second too long. Mom showed it to me years ago." "No," I said quietly. "She didn't." His jaw tightened. My wife never shared secrets she intended to keep. If Evelyn had shown him this box, she would have told me. We had lived nearly 50 years without hiding anything important from one another. Daniel took a slow step into the room. "You shouldn't be carrying heavy things with your wrist." "I'll manage." "Let me hold it." I said I'll manage. For a moment, the pleasant mask disappeared completely. His eyes hardened. The same eyes that had watched me fall. The same eyes that had looked away instead of offering a hand. "Dad," he said, lowering his voice, "you don't know what you're getting into." I think I'm beginning to. He exhaled sharply and rubbed the back of his neck. Mom was sick. The medication affected her thinking. Is that why she wrote me 2 notes warning me about you? His face froze. So there were notes. He hadn't known. The tiny mistake told me everything. He had been searching, but he had never found them. You've been through this room before, I said. He didn't answer. You've searched every drawer. Silence. You've been looking for this box. I was trying to protect you. From what? He looked toward the hallway before answering. Some things are bigger than you understand. I almost laughed. At 72 years old, after surviving recessions, losing the love of my life, building a business from nothing, and burying more friends than I cared to count, my own son believed I couldn't understand. Try me. Instead of speaking, he pulled out his phone. A message flashed across the screen. Claire. His fingers moved quickly. Found it. She knows. No. He corrected himself. He knows. He slipped the phone back into his pocket so smoothly that most people would have missed it. I didn't. I think we've both had enough excitement for one night, he said. Give me the box. No. It belongs to Mom. It belongs to me now. His breathing became heavier. Then, just as suddenly, he smiled again. Fine. He backed toward the hallway. Sleep on it. The smile never reached his eyes. But tomorrow morning, we're settling everything. He disappeared downstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close again before releasing the breath I'd been holding. Whatever was inside that box terrified him. That meant Evelyn hadn't left me memories. She had left me evidence. I carefully returned the locked box to its hiding place. If Daniel believed it was still there, he might reveal his next move before realizing I intended to retrieve it later. Then I slipped out of the sewing room carrying only the second note. As I reached my bedroom, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I answered without speaking. A woman's calm voice said only 6 words. Richard, this is Miriam. Don't trust the police. The line went dead. I stared at the dark screen. Evelyn's note had told me to call Miriam Cole. Instead, Miriam had found me first. I did not sleep. Every hour, the old grandfather clock in the hallway reminded me how little time I had before morning. Daniel believed he still controlled the situation. Claire believed I was frightened and confused. Both assumptions were useful. Just before sunrise, I dressed quietly, wrapped my swollen wrist with an elastic bandage, and slipped out through the back door. The air carried the cool scent of wet grass. Evelyn had always loved mornings like this. She said the world told the truth before people woke up. Lake Mercer was only a 15-minute drive away. The oak tree still stood on the ridge overlooking the water, wider than I remembered, its branches stretching like old arms across the pale sky. 48 years earlier, I had knelt beneath those branches with a borrowed ring and $27 in my pocket. Evelyn had laughed before I even finished asking. Every anniversary afterward, we buried another small tin capsule beneath the roots. Not valuables, just memories. A letter about our first house, a photograph from Daniel's graduation, a pressed flower from our final vacation together. I found the flat stone we always used as a marker and knelt slowly despite the pain in my ribs. The soil was softer than expected. Someone had dug here recently. My stomach tightened. I cleared away the loose dirt until my fingers struck metal. The capsule was still there. Inside lay a tiny brass key wrapped inside plastic to protect it from moisture. Beside it rested another folded note. Richard, if this capsule has been disturbed, someone else knows about our tradition. Do not return home without speaking to Miriam. She has copies. Burn nothing. Trust the documents, not the explanations. Love always. Evelyn. Copies. The word echoed inside my mind. Copies of what? I slid the key into my pocket and stood carefully. A black sedan was parked across the road. Its engine was off. A man wearing sunglasses sat behind the wheel pretending to read a newspaper. When he noticed me looking, he lowered the paper just enough for our eyes to meet. Then he started the engine. The sedan pulled away without hurry. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe not. I drove directly to the address Miriam had written years earlier in an old Christmas card. Evelyn had insisted we keep. It was a brick law office tucked between a bakery and a pharmacy downtown. The sign on the glass door read, Miriam Cole, attorney at law. She was already waiting. Gray-haired, neatly dressed, perhaps 65, with sharp eyes that reminded me immediately of Evelyn. Without introducing herself, she unlocked the door and motioned me inside. "You were followed," she said. "I know." "No," she replied quietly as she locked the deadbolt behind us. "You don't." She looked directly at my bruised face. "They're no longer trying to steal your house, Richard." She paused. "They're trying to steal everything your wife spent the last 3 years protecting." I lowered myself carefully into the chair across from Miriam's desk, every bruise reminding me of the night before. She didn't ask how I had been injured. She already knew. Instead, she opened a thick accordion file secured with 2 red bands. Every tab was labeled in Evelyn's handwriting. For a moment I couldn't speak. "She organized all of this herself?" I finally asked. Miriam nodded. "Over nearly 3 years. 3 years. That meant Evelyn had begun preparing long before cancer stole her strength. She came to me after discovering unusual withdrawals from one of your investment accounts," Miriam said. "At first she thought it was identity theft. Then she followed the money. And it led to Daniel." The room felt smaller. "He wasn't stealing large amounts," she continued. "Just enough to avoid attracting attention. A few thousand here, 500 there, small transfers disguised as maintenance expenses and tax adjustments." I closed my eyes. I had signed whatever Evelyn placed in front of me during those months, because I trusted her completely. She had quietly corrected every fraudulent transaction before I ever noticed. Why didn't she tell me? Because she believed she'd stop him before you were forced to choose between your son and the truth. The words landed harder than the fall down the stairs. That sounded exactly like Evelyn, always trying to protect everyone, even when it hurt her. Miriam slid several photographs across the desk. Daniel. Claire. A man I didn't recognize. Then another. The same man shaking Daniel's hand outside a casino. "Who's he?" "His name is Victor Hayes. I've never heard of him." I wish that were still true. She handed me another document. Victor Hayes owned the appraisal company scheduled to visit my house that morning. He also owned Summit Property Holdings, the same company listed on the forged transfer papers. So the appraisal was fake. "It was never an appraisal," Miriam replied. "It was the final step. Once you signed, the property would be transferred through a chain of shell companies. Within 48 hours, recovering it would become a legal nightmare." I remembered Daniel's urgency, the pressure, the rehearsed concern. Everything suddenly fit together. "But Evelyn said there were copies." "There are." Miriam reached into her safe and removed a sealed envelope thicker than the others. Inside were notarized statements, certified bank records, copies of forged signatures, surveillance photographs, and a flash drive. Evelyn collected evidence every time Daniel crossed another line. My throat tightened. She knew he might become dangerous. She hoped he wouldn't. Miriam looked directly at me. But 6 weeks before she died, she told me something I'll never forget. "What was that?" Her voice softened. "If Richard ever falls because of Daniel, it won't be an accident." A chill spread through me. Before I could answer, Miriam's receptionist hurried into the office without knocking. She looked pale. "Miriam." "What is it?" "Your house." My heart skipped. The receptionist swallowed hard. "It's on fire." For a second, nobody moved. The words seemed too absurd to understand. "My house?" I repeated. The receptionist nodded, struggling to catch her breath. "The fire department just called. A neighbor reported smoke coming from the back of the property. They said the blaze started near the study." My study. The room where Daniel had seen the envelope. The room where the recorder still sat inside the bottom drawer. Miriam was already reaching for her coat. "Come with me." The drive felt endless, even though it took less than 15 minutes. Long before we reached my street, I saw the flashing lights reflecting against the morning sky. Fire engines lined both sides of the road. Curious neighbors stood behind yellow tape. The flames had been contained, but black smoke still drifted from a shattered study window. Daniel stood on the front lawn with one arm around Claire. He looked devastated. Too devastated. When he noticed me stepping out of Miriam's car, surprise flashed across his face before disappearing behind practiced relief. "Dad," he shouted, hurrying toward me. "Thank God you're okay." I stopped several feet away. "What happened?" "I don't know. We woke up and smelled smoke. I tried to save everything, Claire wiped imaginary tears from her eyes. It must have been faulty wiring. The wiring was replaced last year, I said. Neither of them answered. A fire investigator approached carrying a clipboard. Mr. Bennett? Yes. I'm Inspector Lewis. He glanced toward the damaged window. Fortunately, the fire stayed mostly inside your study. Any idea how it started? He hesitated. We're still examining the evidence. Before he could continue, another firefighter walked over carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside was the twisted remains of a red plastic gasoline container. Inspector Lewis frowned. We found this beneath the broken window. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. Claire looked away. The inspector continued carefully. It appears someone poured accelerant through the window after breaking the glass. So it wasn't an accident. No. Silence settled over the yard. Then Daniel shook his head violently. This is insane. Who would do something like that? I watched him without blinking. You tell me. For the first time since the fall, genuine panic appeared in his eyes. Just then, Inspector Lewis turned toward me again. There's one more thing. What is it? We recovered part of a digital recorder. My pulse quickened. It was damaged by the fire, he said, but our forensic lab may still recover the audio. Daniel's face drained of every trace of color. He realized exactly what I realized. If the recording survived, the fire had just become the worst mistake he had ever made. Inspector Lewis asked everyone to remain on the property while his team finished collecting evidence. Daniel paced across the lawn, pretending to comfort Claire, but every few seconds his eyes drifted toward the burned study window. He was not grieving the damage. He was wondering what had survived. Miriam stepped beside me. Do nothing, she whispered. Truth is finally doing the work for us. Within an hour, the forensic technician emerged carrying a sealed case. He spoke quietly with Inspector Lewis, who then walked directly toward us. Mr. Bennett, he said. The memory card inside the recorder survived. The casing melted, but the recording is intact. Daniel stopped pacing. Inspector Lewis pressed play on a portable speaker. The first voices were ordinary. Then Claire clearly said, There wasn't any envelope. Moments later Daniel admitted, You don't know what you're getting into. Finally, the recording captured his whispered text message and my words about him searching the sewing room. It was not a confession to the fire or the fall, but it destroyed the story they had rehearsed. Lewis looked at Daniel. Earlier you told me you had never entered the study after your father's accident. Daniel said nothing. Miriam handed the inspector Evelyn's file. These documents establish motive, she said calmly. Forgery, financial fraud, attempted property theft, and evidence of intimidation. Lewis accepted the folder without another question. Claire broke first. She buried her face in her hands and began sobbing. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. Victor said the old man would sign. Daniel said nobody would get hurt. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. Claire, stop talking. She looked at me instead. We only wanted the house. Those 5 words ended everything. Months later, after the trials and endless paperwork, the house was repaired. Daniel accepted a plea agreement. Claire testified against him. Victor Hayes disappeared before sentencing, but investigators recovered enough assets to restore every stolen dollar. On Sunday mornings I still visit Evelyn beneath the old oak, before stopping at her grave. I tell her she was right to trust the truth instead of anger. The note on my desk did not save my life because it exposed my son. It saved my life because it reminded me that love should never require blindness. When people ask why I live alone now, I simply smile. Peace echoes much louder than laughter ever could. I still keep Evelyn's note inside my drawer. Doubt visits. I read those 5 warnings again. They no longer fill me with sorrow. They remind me that courage sometimes arrives inside an envelope.